Hello and welcome to the vlog, everyone. Welcome back. First of all, thank you to the listeners. The response to my previous interview was fantastic. I'm very humbled by the response. And I think I got a number of people sending me private notes, encouraging me to continue this. And so what better way to do that than with a very old, wonderful friend of mine who actually is someone I admire very much for many reasons that I hope will be very evident during this conversation. Chris Jácome, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Chris, normally my first question is about the martial arts journey. Today, I'm going to start a little bit different because I like breaking patterns. It's really about the fact that I want to tell the listeners, one of the reasons I've started this series of interviews in YouTube is you gave me that advice. So I was feeling a little lost a while ago. I had another project that wasn't going as well as I wanted, and a desire in my heart to do more with the martial arts simply because of my passion. And I had a chat with you. That's when you encouraged me, basically said, just do it. And then you gave me actual advice of how to get YouTube a little bit more traction when I'm really not a YouTube savvy person. But that piece of advice is really one of the big reasons why we have this series of interviews. So really hats off and thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, that's an honor, and I'm honored to be part of the origin story for you. Yeah.
And you are very good. So I'm pretty sure the audience is really eager to know about you and your connection with the martial arts. So tell us a little bit about you first as a person, maybe where you're from and where you live and what you do, and then how you started this incredible journey of martial arts of yours.
All right. So, I was born in Arizona, the United States, and I had kind of a challenging childhood as far as health issues, and so I had a bunch of stuff that we could go on. I could go on for that's a whole nother story. I got into the one thing that I got into was gymnastics as a kid. And I did gymnastics, but I had a disease in my hips. So for the first year of gymnastics, this is in third grade, I wasn't able to walk. So I could only do like the high bar or the parallel bars or the rings, but somebody would have to lift me. I couldn't do any of the dismounts or anything. And I would crawl between the events, and just kind of drag my legs because I had a disease in my hips. And then they would, put me on the apparatus and do that. I would do my stuff and then I would continue. But, luckily all that stuff went, I beat that disease and my hips are all okay. And then, as far as martial arts, I think so many young kids are just like, you see martial arts in cartoons and then in movies. So martial arts are always kind of in, I think, people's general collective consciousness somehow through media, which always fascinated me. And I really think there's a connection with my gymnastics. And I had a Japanese coach that was very, very strict. But I really liked the way they trained us and taught us in our classes. And then I joined the gymnastics team or whatever. And so I was I liked that. I liked being physical. Because of my hip problems, I had to be on, so a lot of kids with this hip problem that I had, which was called Legg-Perthes disease, they have to kind of go into a wheelchair because it's really hard for a kid to not run around, and it doesn't, it hurts, but you can still do it. But the problem is you have necrosis of the hip joint, and so it will crush the hip joint. And so, so a lot of kids with this disease will actually be put in a wheelchair. I had the family support, and I had, I guess, enough discipline to just stay on crutches. So I was on crutches with a weird brace or whatever. And anyway, but I had ridiculous upper body strength because for basically 3.5 years, I didn't use my legs. And then I did gymnastics on top of it, and moving my body all around. So yeah, I was into martial arts just like any kid. Like, you're just like, woo, that seems fun to jump and kick and all that stuff. And then around 6th grade, I actually I was like, I think that's when Karate Kid came out. And so then I was like, well, I got to take a karate class. That's what everybody, I'm like, I got to do that. So I took a karate class, through the local Y or whatever. And then that teacher had a dojo, and it was I actually don't remember what type of karate it was. I was in there for probably about a year, and then something just kind of weird happened there as far as watching. It wasn't that particular teacher, but in that school, they allowed sparring between upper belts and lower belts. And one of my buddies got an upper belt, got a brown belt, like, as far as, he was a yellow belt, and he hit a brown belt, and it upset the brown belt so much that the guy flattened my friend, like sent him almost through a wall. And so after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm not interested in this if this is the way. And I was so used to a regimented, like a really well-disciplined group of people, participants going to train and better themselves from gymnastics, that seeing that particular environment at that dojo, I was like, it's not for me. This is not what I envisioned in my head as far as what martial arts was. And so that was it. I think that was in, around 7th or 8th grade that I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. And then I left martial arts for, number of years until the Born Identity. So the Born Identity came out, and I watched the Born Identity, and I was like, I always loved it. I loved the idea of martial arts, and it was like, but I had that terrible experience, and I just left it. And I saw the Born Identity, and for that one, now there could have been lots of movies that I missed that had kind of that style of martial arts and combat to it that I missed. But that's the one that I saw that was like, whoa. And it wasn't like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It was a very different, like, my mind just it blew my mind. I was like, it's a very different way of moving, and it's so close, and the way they filmed it, it just brought out a whole different element to martial arts that I was like, it just turned a switch in me. I was like, I gotta learn that. That's what I gotta do. And I actually didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on the DVD. So and so then I went and bought the DVD, and I got the extras, and on the extras, it said that the fight coordinator, the fight choreographer was using Kali and Escrima. And I was like, what's that? I don't know what that is. I've heard of karate and Kung Fu, and that's it. And so then I looked that up, and I was like, how do I find this? And so then I found a teacher so at that time, by then, many years later, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I found a website, and for those of the audience that might not know, is that probably you don't know, but that I'm a musician. So that I'm a professional musician. I'm a professional guitarist, specifically guitar. So my hands are super important to me. And so I was a little tentative and wanted to, it's like, I want to make sure that this place is as safe as possible. I have to do this. I have to do it, but I really want to be as safe as possible for my hands. So luckily I found, it was just providential that I found a guy named Kenny Yezik. His last name is spelled with the other different pronunciation of the J. So it's Jezek, Yezik. And he had a martial arts school, and he was teaching JKD, which is, it includes some of the Filipino martial arts. So anyway, so that was it. I found him, and I was like, this was the only school that was, kind of geographically feasible. And then I was like, they teach, this includes some of what I saw, and I was like, cool, man. And so I emailed, and I I specifically said, I'm an artist, so like I really want to do this, but I just kind of want to know how everything is going, and I'd like to talk to you. And so he emailed me back, and again, Providence. He happens to have been and he's still a phenomenal dancer and dance teacher, but he's like, at one point in his life, he was one of the top, as far as I remember, he's one of the top 10 rated dancers in the world. And been on Broadway, done Hollywood, all choreographed all this stuff, worked with Gregory Hines and all, amazing. So he got back to me and said, dude, I've got you, don't worry, I know what it's like to be a professional artist. I'm going to take care of you. Come on down to my school and start training. So I was like, cool. And so that's what I did. And that was I looked it up, I wrote it down. What year was that? I started class with Kenny. I started class with Kenny in March of 2003. Mm-hmm. So I just passed my 18-year anniversary of doing martial arts, and once I got into it, it was it became a serious, almost obsession with me, and I just haven't stopped. It's like I have to really balance that it's like it's got such a pull for me, yeah. But so that's the
wonderful
beginning. Yeah, that's the beginning.
Well, so there's so many things. As you were speaking, I was seeing items that we could just have. I'm already thinking to bring you back because there's so much follow-up we can do to all these things. But let me mention a couple of them really quick. If you look at your story, and I want my listeners to think about this, right? So many of the great martial artists have basically a background in overcoming difficulty. I mean, when you told me about your background, it is a story of not giving up. It is a story of having handicap and not giving up. And this is funny because recently I was having a conversation about the origin of some martial arts. I understand many martial arts have many different backgrounds, but at its heart, we wouldn't have martial arts systems if we didn't have people that were weaker and had a deficiency that they had to overcome against someone stronger. Because then why have a system? If you could overpower someone, and when it was in the ancient times about life and death, it was purely about survival and not about defending a system or being proud of your school. Therefore, martial art is fundamentally the art of overcoming difficulty. And so when you told me that, how you started, how your life started, to be honest, it's incredible. This is really what it is. That's no wonder you connected so much with the martial art, because of that. It's to be honest, hats off. It's a great lesson for listeners. They may be going through difficulties in life. Everyone has some difficulty. And so you're inspiring us to just keep going and not give up,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that there is, and now that you mention it, that there's absolutely, I would say that there's a correlation between because of health problems, as a kid, I had to learn how to internally manage fear and internally manage my emotions and be able to move forward. And so there was that already kind of, dare I say, like a little early wisdom that I always that kind of, and then because of that formation that happened with the gymnastics and that discipline training, I could see that, and that's where I really helped form my vision for what I wanted to do, or what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, my first foray into it wasn't the proper fit, but I'm just glad I found it when I did. That's, we, like you just said earlier in the top of the show, just starting, you got to start somewhere. So, I could be regretful that I didn't, look for other martial arts and start, a couple of decades earlier. But it is what it is, and I'm just glad I've had the 18 years that I've had, and that was just the beginning. So it just gets more fun from there. Yeah.
If anyone, occasionally at work or with friends, because I'm so passionate about martial arts, I'm constantly talking about martial arts, constantly.
Yeah,
and some people get a little almost like envious of the passion, and they say, well, Francis, I want to start martial arts. I want to go and start martial arts, but you tell me your story and you have it so nice. You have a teacher you trust. I wouldn't have that. I would say, look, that's not true. It took me years and years and years and years, and you would not get to a point in which things click if you didn't get started. So when they ask me, what should I do? Just go to the most convenient school near you and just get started. Because everything else happens by its own way, through the training, through the practice, and through the following of your journey. It's just like I also did it. I went to many schools that were just neighborhood schools, and I sat in a class with 15 other guys doing this in the air. The important thing is there was a passion, and we didn't wait for perfection to even start training it, right? So even when you tell me about your past and how the first one might not be the one you end up with, that almost always happens, but it informs you, it educates you, it builds something in you that gives you more experience. And I've always said the martial arts journey is the ownership journey. You own your journey, you keep going, learn from it and keep going.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Absolutely.
The other great lesson of your background, your teacher dancing and you have gymnastics. Interesting that I find so many great martial artists have a background in something that gives kinetic awareness. This is an interesting thing. I've even listened to interviews out there, people that are looking for what is the ideal student is usually not someone that's very opinionated on the martial arts, but someone that has awareness of the body. Like something that has to do with movement and being aware of things, because a dancer and gymnastics, you can't afford to not be detailed. Like the difference between certain inches of position can mean a lot. And so you develop that awareness. I think having a background in kinetic awareness it's a very beneficial background. And you and your teacher are both good examples of
that. Kinetic awareness is really, really important in martial arts. And so there are other ways of getting it. But then all of a sudden you're dealing with kinetic awareness, but then you're dealing with having to deal with another individual as well, not just your awareness of your own body, but proprioception and all that stuff.
It starts with kinetic, then goes to the person, then goes to the environment. It's a beautiful, but it's hard to be aware if you're not self-aware.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So what is Crucial Combatives Academy, and how would you define it for someone who's interested in learning about it?
Oh, Crucial Combatives Academy is my school, and it's an amalgamation. I don't know if amalgamation, but it's a synthesis of a bunch of stuff that that I've trained. So I started in JKD after a few years of that Kenny stopped teaching, but I was then starting to take private classes with one of his senior students and doing trades. I was teaching him guitar and he was teaching me extra JKD stuff. But he would in our training, he would mention things, and I'm like, where is that from? I don't understand what you're talking about. And he's like, well, you could do this or this. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like what we're doing. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And so this was my introduction to my Sifu, Heath Cox. And he was training me in JKD in private classes. And then he was going through a transition in his life, and he was already a very high level black belt in Kung Fu San Soo. I had been teaching for years and years, but he was taking on JKD as another art and working with Kenny. And so he, he was going through and he had moved. And so he was just starting a new class of Kung Fu San Soo. And he hadn't talked to me about it, but I was questioning all this, all these other options. I was like, what is this? And so he would tell me, but it didn't make, I was like, I don't know, I don't know what you're, I just keep on showing up to training. We'll just go. And then he called me and in August of 2007 and said, I'm going to start this class. It's called, it's Kung Fu San Soo, and I think you're really going to like it. And I'm like, okay, well, I know you're an amazing teacher. So yeah, sign me up. So in November of 2007, that's when I started Kung Fu San Soo. And so really I'm a Kung Fu San Soo man. That's my primary art. That's what I do. Yeah. Then, Heath Cox, Master Heath Cox is, he certified me as a full instructor later in Jeet Kune Do concepts. So, apprentice instructor phase 1, then full instructor, and then also modern Escrima concepts, apprentice instructor phase 1 and full instructor. And then, so those are my certifications through him. And then, with San Soo, I've eventually, last year I got my 8th degree black belt. So it's just been a huge journey of learning. And I'm, I go to class twice a week, so I still spend at least 6 hours with Sifu, 6 hours a week with Sifu. And I just feel like every class is like, it's just Master Cox presents. It's just unbelievable. Just unbelievable work in Kung Fu San Soo, and then in Escrima and in JKD. I've been training with him. And then, so the other things that we've done is, from very early on, started, grappling, ground fighting, all that stuff. So I hold no official rank, nor does he, in any ground fighting, or jiu-jitsu. But we do a lot of it. So we wrestle a lot.
Yeah.
And then, because of the, my love of martial arts, I've also, I'm just constantly like, I can't stop. I can't turn it off. I'm always like, just so, there's so much, and it's so awesome, and it's so amazing. And I'm just like, oh man. So like, I'll be reading articles, and, one day I read an article on, this incredible knife fighting article that I was super impressed with the author. And it was on, I think it was on ITS Tactical, but anyway, I can't remember where it was, it could have been on Recoil too, that magazine. So, online magazine. So I read this amazing article, and I looked up the author, Chad McBroom, and he is teaching, I live in Phoenix, and he's teaching just south of Tucson, Arizona. So it's like a 2-hour drive. And I'm from Tucson. I've got family in Tucson. At that time, I was working in Tucson quite a bit, going down and doing gigs. And so I was like, I'm gonna call him, and so I emailed him and called him and talked to him. And I was like, so, you're real close. I would love to train with you. And he was happy to, train me. And I showed up, and amazing teacher. I did his worked with him in comprehensive fighting systems. I did a bunch of knife work, edge weapons work. I didn't, I want to train lots more from Chad. He's an incredible teacher. But I got a certification for like level 4 of his edge weapons curriculum. That's very informed by a bunch of other stuff like Libre fighting and all that stuff. And anyway, so I did that. And then because of the interwebs, you know, you're always looking at, you know, YouTube and all that stuff. And I found Kevin Secor, of the founder of Combat Systema. And so Kevin Secor, I was just blown away. And there's something about him that I was like, that is, I want to do what he's doing. You know, it's like, but I find that all the time. There's so many people that I want to train with. So Kevin Secor, I was like, oh my gosh, he's a brilliant man, you know. And that's one of the other things that I'm just flabbergasted. Before I got into this journey, I had no idea, like, the level of just dedication and vast knowledge bases and of the practitioners, the people that really do this are so well studied. They're like me, but I'm still kind of like a baby, you know. I'm just 18 years old, you know. But they've been doing this for 30 years. For, you know, like you know, I'm an 8th degree black belt right now, but my teacher, Master Heath Cox, he was an 8th degree when I started. So he's got all, you know, so many more years of development and training. And it's just unbelievable the amount of knowledge these people possess. And it's incredible. So Kevin Secor, I started training, you know, training in my mind with him on YouTube. And I would stay up, you know, really late at night watching video after video of him, just like, oh. And I was like, and I just kept on going more. It was never, you know, and then I found myself using like his language and like the way he described things. And I found in my other martial arts practice, and I was teaching at that time, I was like, I gotta go train. I gotta go meet him. Well, he's in Canada. So, but it just worked out that I was like, you know, I went, he actually had an instructor's course. It was, from what I know, it was one of the very few that he has. And so I went up there for a week-long, super intensive week and trained. And, you know, because in martial arts, it's like it's the personality. There has to be a connection in the personality and a connection in the paradigm, kind of, you know. And then it's also, you need to go hands-on with somebody. You know, it's like I because of my training, I was able to go, you know, I'm like, cool, I know how that feels. I know how that feels. Good. That one, I really want him to do that to me. I really want to feel how that is. I want to, you know, I'm like, okay, you know, so it was invaluable. It was an amazing experience to go and train from him. And I look forward to having that opportunity again. So I think about 10 minutes ago, you asked me what Crucial Combatives Academy is. So it's a whole bunch of stuff. And it's an academy, but it's a very personal academy. So really, I take from all these different sources that I've come through, it's like I personalize for what that individual needs, and then we go from there, and also what their goals are. You know, so really, if they're, you know, some people really do want a belt system. So if that is the case, then I would say, you know, Kung Fu San Soo, that's what I would do. But I cannot not do the other stuff. No matter what, they're still going to get, because that's what I do. You know, it's me, you know.
Part of you.
But then I keep people on certain tracks. Yeah. So my Crucial Combatives Academy is me, an expression of me and how I view martial arts. And then the interview process of students is super important to try to go, okay, well, what is it that you really want? You know, what is it that you are looking for? And then what is it that you're envisioning, trying to see if those things are in a line. Like, they're like, because some people are like, well, I want to be really good at I don't know, they'll have a goal that is not really congruent with what they're pursuing or whatever, and so kind of figure that out and then go from there and pull from whatever I need to pull from. So that's the answer.
That was the best answer I've ever gotten, because it's true, because you can only teach what you have inside. Basically, Crucial Combatives is you and your history and your journey, and you go and say, how do I pass this on to people that are interested? I love that. And said, I'm fascinated. And I want to say one more thing. Another reason I connect at so many levels with you is your martial arts passion. Really incredible to feel, to sense. I love martial arts, and there are very few things as appealing as getting to talk to someone who has that fire, who has that passion. You just can't stop it, and you're constantly learning, and being interested about things you see. So
yeah,
it's fascinating to talk to you. To be honest, I've known you for a while, years now, but I never knew the depth of your journey. So I'm so glad we're doing this. And another thing that is making me realize, because none of this is random. You learn martial arts, and then you start feeling things, and you feel attraction to certain systems or teachers because there's something there. And I almost want to word it in this following expression, which is that the martial arts that you learn at first is a blueprint for learning. It basically gives you this ability that now you go there and try something, and you're like, boom, is integrating in your system. This is not about picking and choosing. You have to go deep in a system before you really have that blueprint, and you can create a consistent synthesis out of all these things. And that's what you've done with Crucial Combatives. I admire it. I love it.
Thank you. It's an incredible journey, and I feel like I'm just starting. Like I'm just, in Kung Fu San Soo, 8th degree black belt is a master. And I'm just like, I feel like such a newbie. I really do. I feel like every time I go and train from Master Cox, I'm like, what? This is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so amazing. Yes. And I just like, it's like this brand new, like, I have said many times, so first of all, for anybody who's training martial arts, I highly recommend in your training and if you can do this, implement this in your classes, is to have a mat chat, a post class. If you have that ability to do a post class where it's a debrief and people can share what they're learning and how their journey is going.
Wonderful idea.
It will pay massive dividends if you're willing to let it, if you're willing to listen to your students. And then as a student, it helps you formulate, and you have to talk about these things that's another thing that's just mind blowing about this journey, is all this information that's passed non-verbally. And then you cannot, you can talk about it, but it's not the same. You have to feel it, So the mat chat is super important, and I would highly recommend it because it helps you to be able to develop yourself as being able to speak about what your journey is, that internal journey. And then I had a point there and I forgot it. What was the point? We were talking about that mat chat. Oh, so that's it. For many years, and I try to do this, because we have mat chats, Master Cox has them. And so with his classes, I think, like a year into it, because he actually takes the time to write out and gives us a printout of the techniques and stuff, And so for every class, he does that. Yeah. So I have volumes of material. Yeah. And I make a point at least twice a year with the students. I try to pick a time when there's the most students possible, but I'll say, this is gold. What this is right now, he's giving you gold. Like, this is there, you cannot even place a value on what this is. It is it's indescribable how much that is. And then take the time to go home and write the notes, because you think you're going to remember, but if you write your own notes about all this stuff, then you will actually get it in you a little bit faster. You'll understand it better. And if you take that time, your journey is going to be so enhanced depth wise. And then you're going to improve a lot faster. You're going to know yourself a lot better, and you're going to be able to solve problems faster in your own journey. So anyway. So.
I think students have to be aware that, look, everything is all right. You can learn at your own pace, but some people are not aware of how different it is for you as a teacher to have a student that you give this, and the student thinks about it, obsesses about it, tries this, tries that. And a week later, when the student sees you, that student has gone through months and months of progress. And other people are restarting because, you gave them this.
They haven't thought about it. They haven't thought about it again.
Exactly. And they say, no, it's a question of being busy. No, it's a question of being passionate. It's a question of being passionate, because when you love something, you'll be doing, even if you're working, you'll be like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
When he did that with the elbow, oh man, I see what he did. I got to ask him this next week. You just can't help it. It's just something,
Exactly.
It's wonderful.
Well, and we can't help it. But I think that you and I both were like, I can't figure out why everybody isn't just totally flipping out about how amazing all this stuff is.
Yeah. Another beautiful thing you said, that it really is at the heart of why I love it so much. How you, after all days and 8th degree and everything, you feel like a newbie sometimes, right? Honestly, when I'm training with my teacher, George Lee, I feel that every single time that I'm a newbie, but it's what motivates me, because ahead of me, I have this endless field of opportunity to learn. And so the one thing I never want to be is I've completed my journey. In other words, if you want to say, Francis, who are you? The eternal beginner. I want to be the eternal beginner, because the real joy is when you know just a little to look ahead and say, oh man, look at this journey ahead of me. How much I still have to learn. Why would anyone not have that? You know what I mean? Why would anyone feel the journey is finished? And people are a little obsessed with complete the system. How long does it take to complete the system? And my answer is, I hope it takes 7 reincarnations at least, man. Because
exactly.
because I don't want it. I don't want it to end.
Yeah.
So that's so wonderful. I connect with so many things you've said. I want to ask you a couple more questions, but we won't go too long, because I want to leave people wanting more. I think of all the systems you've mentioned, Kung Fu San Soo, perhaps for some of the listeners, they may know less about it. And so is it possible to describe it a little bit, not necessarily better or worse, but just what makes it unique, or what is it that are some of the characteristics of Kung Fu San Soo?
So it's a mixed martial art. It really involves every kind of distance, kicking, punching, infighting, groundwork. So it's as far as all the ranges of interpersonal combat, it addresses them all. As far as when I started the art, I learned one particular history of the art from what I know. So I've all these people can, all the martial arts historians of Kung Fu San Soo or whatever, they can have their own, interpretations, or, you go, no, well, this is wrong or whatever. So there's one story about the Kuan Yin monastery and, handing down from that. But basically it all comes down to Jimmy Woo bringing Kung Fu San Soo over to the US. Yeah. And I think he got here in 1953 or something around there. But then there's a lot of speculation about how he got that knowledge, where it actually comes from. Then another master, Ron Gatewood, came out with a book talking about, well, maybe it's actually a descendant or the knowledge is actually from pirates going up one particular river in China and doing the mix of that. And regardless, and then even how much, like, because he was a young man when he arrived. And so it's like, well, it seems obvious to me, like me right now training, I'm still learning and I'm evolving all the time. Yeah. So he wasn't a static individual, like he was still training. And so, there's a lot of, speculation as to how much he knew and how much he still learned from other sources once he got in the US too. Regardless, what he has brought over can be an incredible system of personal development through the martial arts, and the actual way of training is incredible when done correctly. Yeah. So I think that I like to work with the pragmatism of it, of martial arts. So I'm not, I like the history, I enjoy it, but that's not, I like to deal with, what's going on. Again, it's like, you got to go hands-on with somebody, I don't know what until we actually go a little bit and we can go, oh, okay, cool. Oh, what's that? Because everybody, you can get the same information as a teacher of music too. I can teach somebody, I can teach you, but just because I teach you doesn't mean you're going to do it the way I do it. And it doesn't even mean that you're going to even do it ever. Yeah. So, I have a new phrase that I've just been starting to say to students that are doing well. I'm like, your work is working. Your work is working. And no matter what, like, I can teach you guitar, but I can't play guitar for you. You have to put in the work.
Your work
you have to put in the work. Yeah. So anyway, so all the knowledge, it's like a written page of music. That's not music. It's when it's played. Yeah. And so a written page of techniques, that doesn't mean anything until it's done. And then we see the quality and all the attributes that come to that. And so anyway, but the problem with martial arts is that we're training something that we hopefully, if we're doing it in a reality based, hopefully we're training something that we never want to do to anybody. We never want to have to use these skills. So I hope that there's a whole lot of other benefits that you're getting from the training, because otherwise you're training a bunch of stuff that you never want to use. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of other things that you're getting from the training, and hopefully that, a lot of it is the fellowship and just the wonderful sharing of that experience and all this stuff. And then there's the second problem is that these martial arts, any martial art, you can't really do it. Yeah. So there's always a flaw. Yeah. And I think that's a Rory Miller thing, where, there's always a flaw in the training, always. Because otherwise you're actually fighting, and we can't do that. That's not the road to longevity.
Exactly.
So so we're pointing, the best thing that we can do is point at the problem from a whole bunch of different directions, recognize what allowances we're making with our training, and then going, okay, well, because of that allowance, people can get delusional.
Yes.
If you don't recognize that allowance is being made, you can get delusional. Yeah. And so then you make another allowance and go, okay, well, yeah, that allowance was delusional, but now we're making another one. Yeah. So but if you get stuck in that stuff. So anyway, so San Soo has form techniques, and their version of sparring is called freestyle. Okay. And so, but freestyle is not sparring. It's not sparring. Okay. It can be sparring for the very first entrance. So it's totally like you can do anything for that very first thing. But then after that, it's, to use a baseball analogy, it's a home run art. It's not meant to exchange. There is no exchange. It's me all, like, once I go in, it's all about me, and that's it. Yeah. So, but that's a problem. There's a huge problem with that. And so then we get, all these different types of practitioners and types of teachers, and you can get very, very uh, uh, lazy with the entrance, leaving your punches out there, or even some people will actually tell people, I'm going with my right and punch at them, or tapping their leg, this is what I'm doing. So those kind of things, which could be beneficial at one part of the training, but it's when you don't realize that stuff is getting done, that's a real big problem. It can be a huge problem. So Kung Fu San Soo, I really believe in this Kung Fu San Soo that has been passed down to me. But just like so many arts that, it's like I see other representations of Kung Fu San Soo, and I'm like, I don't know. And then recognizing too, like going, okay, well, that's why I train other stuff too, just to try to get a different picture, a different look at the same problem and how it's solved in other ways and in different training modalities, under pressure testing and, with full on sparring. But then when you're full on, so a lot of people think sparring is fighting, and sparring isn't fighting. Sparring is sparring, so that it can provide some answers, but it's not the answer. And even if we get in so anyway, I'm kind of changing topics. But Kung Fu San Soo, what I really like about it is it gives, it's really cool because these techniques are written. And so you have all this variety, like, probably in my journey, my short journey in San Soo, of 15 years or whatever, I've probably gotten 10,000 plus techniques. Yeah. But that's the whole thing. You can't memorize them. They're not meant to be memorized. They're meant to be just giving you one possible solution to a problem. It's not the solution. It is a possible solution. And so you go through this. And so basically by just learning the techniques, if you don't, that's what I like about it, because even if you don't think about all the principles and you don't geek out on the biomechanics and all that stuff, if you do this and you keep on doing these techniques over and over, you're getting all that without recognizing that you're getting it. And you're turning into this amazing fighter without ever knowing. And it's because of that multitude of techniques that you can't possibly remember. So then you start going, and basically it creates that fluency in understanding what is the closest target, closest weapon, understanding all that stuff, understanding how to move properly to get to those, all that stuff is done within San Soo. And we have this, it's an amazing way of progression through that. And then that freestyle, that improvisational part that we do ends up being where, higher level practitioners, it looks like you just killed somebody. I mean, and to feel like somebody's meat puppet, to feel like you just got owned completely from the very moment, like it's like you just stepped in a bear trap and all of a sudden the whole world collapsed on you, and then you're on the floor and you're like, what just happened? But then understanding what just happened, and there's a whole methodology behind it, and it's just amazing. It's an amazing art, and it can be pretty brutal and it's awesome. I love it. Yeah.
Awesome. It shows that you love it. I love it. I love that you love it.
Thank you.
The one of the things I've said here, I believe very much in the martial arts as a training program. So fundamentally, one of the things that is admirable about the systems, we're trying to learn or teach something very hard to learn or teach. That's the entire point of there be many systems, and it's not something that you see genius all the time, but there's enough examples of so many systems producing incredible skills that one goes like, and to me, it's not about talent. It's about there exists a system or multiple systems that can produce that skill through training, through doing it. And the fact that the arts that have survived and are here today and every now and then produce great examples of skill. Something is in there. What a genius. That's why I get so fascinated about history. And it's not so much because I want to be a historian, but it's because I don't know that people realize the hardest thing is to take one of the hardest things that you can do. In fact, you said it earlier, something you can't do. You can't go around fighting or killing and create a system to get better at it.
Yeah.
Systematically, all you need a student to do is not give up. Say, hey, when you say your work is working, oh my God, this is so hard to learn. What is the secret? Continue working.
Yeah.
And it'll happen. And the fact that we can say that, is just unbelievable. And that's what you're saying, that Kung Fu San Soo for you, the skills you're learning and everything you're learning is the same, however path you go. But it's that progression. It's that progression that it gives you the ability to get better at.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really what anything is about. And like you pointed to that as far as just looking at our journey and going, I don't want this to end, so I think that really one of the biggest things that we can do to the younger generation, whether it's younger students or your children, is to cultivate the love of learning. Exactly. Just the love of learning and not the love of being learned and going, I know this, and going, that's it. So it's like, and so, but it's interesting because we do have to own where we are in the, but at the same time, I think the most important is to cultivate that love of learning and wanting to progress. And by doing that, you stay humble, you go and you feel it, like you said, that beginner's mindset. Do I even know what I'm doing? And then all of a sudden you get with other people and you're like, oh yeah, I've come this far. It's like, I do know what I'm doing, but I know that there's so much more out there. And like, it's like, oh man, I didn't lift my rear heel. Like, oh, what was that? Like, am I getting lazy? Like what, all these little things. And you're like, there's so much to work on. And it's such a beautiful process,
The process is beautiful. The love of learning is what keeps you going. Yes.
Yeah. And so, like with guitar, I'll get people that are like, well, how long is it going to take? Well, I don't even know, really, honestly. Like, if you're asking me that, I don't know. Like, I don't even know if I want to work with you, because that's not what this is about. And this is, you're gonna hopefully the best people in the world, in the history of martial arts or in the history of anything, they've died still practicing.
Exactly. Yeah? The love.
So, like in flamenco guitar, we point to Paco de Lucia, and it's like, what was he doing the day before he died? He was practicing.
Yes.
And that guy, if that guy's practicing, we all got to practice all the time, all day, all the way.
Yeah. And he was. And Paco wasn't just practicing to keep his skills. He was practicing because he was curious. Wait a minute. If I do, oh my God, look, that never died in him. He had it to his last day.
He was not maintaining. He was maintaining, but he was discovering. He was discovering.
Exploring for the love of it. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So it's that journey, but it really is something that I think that that's one of the important things about the arts in general. Like, if I can generalize, is that to have that education in the arts. Because I think people realize, if they can get in it early enough, that they go, this is not, I ain't getting out of this alive. Yeah. It's just, I'm going to continue to work on it. And that pursuit, a lifelong pursuit that, you're never going to, there's always going to be something more to learn, which really there is for everything. But if you can consciously grab hold of one thing and pursue that over years and years, and you understand how skills are developed and built, then you're like, okay, I understand that process, and it's the same for anything. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes when people ask me for advice, because they see that passion, they don't have to do it with martial arts. Just pick an endeavor, something that allows you to express yourself, to challenge yourself, to go forward. Some people can do it with writing, some people do it with painting, some people do it with their knowledge about a system.
Yeah.
You can endeavor, learn and express yourself through it. And everything that challenges you will teach you about yourself. It's impossible that you pick something that's hard and challenges you and you're not actually learning about yourself. That's how we learn about ourselves, through going through challenges.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good time to wrap it up for the sake of time. And because I want to leave the audience wanting more, I just want to say this. One of the reasons I admire you so much, and I know you're going to be uncomfortable now, but I'm going to say it. You have done a similar thing with 3 things that I think is a big lesson. How many people do I know? They started to learn a foreign language. They quit 2 months later. They started to learn guitar and it's collecting dust on the wall. They started judo when they were kids. They've never touched it again. That's all right, as long as they find their own journey. But what I'm saying is, we're talking to a man, Chris Jácome, speaks fluent Spanish. He challenged himself to learn Spanish. Yo he hablado español con él, and he's very fluent. He's a performer and teacher of music. And flamenco, by the way, is very difficult. Even great musicians that have mastered other systems, they go like, oh, I can't touch that. And you are an absolute martial art teacher, expert, but more important, passionate being. And so for that, I'm very humble that you're talking to me today. I admire you greatly. I want to bring you back. And thank you so much for this.
Francis, it's been a joy. Like it felt like we were talking for 5 minutes. It felt like we were just getting started.
Yeah? Exactly. That's what it should be. Exactly. If we were to meet and do a training session, that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah, like 3 days later, we like, oh, come on, we got to stop and eat and rest a little bit.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm so honored to have you. This has been delightful. Thank you.
Right back at you. And hopefully we'll be seeing each other soon, and hopefully not virtually, in person. Yeah.
That would be fantastic. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.